Just keeping me warm because I was in the snow for like 4 hours before the helicopter showed up.
A search and rescue member survived shattering his pelvis and nearly bleeding out in BC's backcountry. We'll tell you what happened and the warning he has for others.
Health Canada has developed guidance for modifying authorized COVID-19 vaccines in response to new variants.
Canadian health officials cut red tape in a bid to fast-track modified vaccines aimed at COVID variants.
It definitely took the wind out of our sails.
Dwayne and Johanna brought joy to the West End last spring with their music from their balcony. Since then, their band has been working to get back to performing online. But now the couple says they're having trouble collecting money that they say they're owed from one of the richest companies in the world.
There are 564 new cases of COVID-19 across the province tonight, and 4 more people have died in the last 24 hours. A key area of concern continues to be in the Fraser Health region, where about half of the province's new cases are once again being reported. 248 people are currently in hospital, with 64 listed in intensive care. So far, nearly 5% of eligible British Columbians have had the vaccine, and that number is expected to start going up much higher as more vaccine doses are set to arrive in BC next week.
We know that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is in for final review with Health Canada. We don't yet know when it might be available, but that will be another tool, another piece that we can add to our toolkit. We know that we have increasing protection in our most at-risk people, and that will increase dramatically starting again next week. But we've also had an uptick in new cases, and we've seen the rise of some of the more transmissible variants in our communities here, particularly in the Lower Mainland. I know these restrictions and closures in many parts of our society have been draining on all of us, and we all want to get back to our regular activities as soon as we can.
More details on how and when to register for a vaccine will be available later this month. And if you're looking for a timeline on when life could start feeling a little more normal, here's what Dr. Henry thinks.
I don't know, maybe I'm too optimistic, but we're going to be in our post-pandemic world by this summer if things continue to go the way that we want them to. We know there's going to be snags.
Passengers whose flights were cancelled by the airlines are entitled, as a matter of law, to a refund.
Reports indicate Air Canada passengers who had flights cancelled by the pandemic might have compensation on the horizon.
Well, to be honest, I think I would have fled to death. Yeah, it's hard to say, but...
He shattered his pelvis in BC's backcountry. The man, who's also a search and rescue member, is still recovering and says he's just lucky to be alive.
It's hard for me, like, just knowing that I put my friends through that there, yeah, I get pretty emotional about it there for sure.
Kevin Aitken was skiing with some friends in the Lillooet backcountry last month on his first run of the day when the unthinkable happened.
Yeah, I just piled into the rocks, and yeah, that was about all I remember. Next thing I know, I was laying in the snow for a long time.
Aitken and his friends spent 4 hours in the snow waiting for help to arrive, but they had one major thing on their side. Multiple members skiing in the group were search and rescue members, and one was even a doctor. They knew what to do and had the tools to do it.
Stopped the bleeding there. Like, I had a pretty bad bleed. Like, I lost a lot of blood there. And yeah, just sort of slowing that down and just keeping me warm.
He was airlifted to hospital and underwent 6 hours of surgery on his pelvis. He spent 10 days in care and is now recovering at home. Despite the horrific accident, he believes in other conditions, things could have been far worse.
I normally ski with smaller groups, like even myself and one other person. And if this would have happened in that case, like, it would have been a totally different outcome there.
What they did in that situation, based on their group dynamics, based on the experience in that group, their preparation, their planning, their training, a lot happened for all of them well before that incident happened. What happened then at the time is they were allowed to assess, mitigate risk, and reduce the severity of that search and rescue call.
Sandra Riches with BC Adventure Smart says preparation is key when going into the great outdoors. She says calls for help have significantly increased during the pandemic due to the number of people exploring what BC has to offer.
Do your research. I think that's what's a really big piece that's missing. And when we talk about the first T in trip planning, and making that plan takes time, referring to guidebooks, using the internet, using your phone.
As for Aitken, he says it will take about 9 months until he is fully recovered, and hopes sharing his story will remind others to be prepared.
I just wanted people to sort of have a look around at who they're with in the backcountry and just know that could be their lifeline, right?
For planning resources, you can visit adventuresmart.ca. On Mount Seymour, Ashley Burr, City News.
A woman is in hospital with critical injuries after an attack in New Westminster on Tuesday afternoon. It happened at a home on Princess Street, not far from 2nd Street. A 42-year-old man has been arrested and charged with aggravated assault and assault with a weapon. Police say the woman and man know each other. And tributes are pouring in for a woman who was killed in a head-on crash in North Vancouver on Tuesday night. Marcelina Agulai was a wife, a grandmother, a teacher, and a devoted member of the community. She had just picked up her husband from work when they were hit by a suspected drunk driver on Low-Level Road. The vehicle crossed the center line and crashed into them. Her husband was badly hurt and remains in the hospital with life-threatening injuries. No word yet on any charges.
Health Canada has developed guidance for modifying authorized COVID-19 vaccines in response to new variants, outlining steps to measure protection by looking at the antibodies in the blood following vaccination and eliminating the need for lengthy clinical studies. This guidance will lead to important outcomes.
Canada is speeding up the approvals process for modified vaccines aimed at COVID variants, letting pharma companies skip clinical trials if they have real-world evidence showing the shots are safe and effective. One epidemiologist compares this to the seasonal flu shot, using the same technology on a new strain of virus.
They're not changing the vector, they're not changing the ingredients, so to speak. They're literally changing that message, which kind of is the beauty of this messenger RNA, is that once you have that template, you should be able to change the information. And we know every year in flu season, it's different information that's being provided in our influenza vaccines because the virus changes.
The guidance on variant vaccines is made by health regulators from Canada, the UK, Australia, Singapore, and Switzerland. Modified vaccines would still need to be reviewed for safety and effectiveness.
You have likely noticed that NACI's recommendations are sometimes different, possibly broader or narrower than the conditions of vaccine use that Health Canada has authorized.
Health Canada officials also addressed seemingly conflicting advice from Health Canada and the National Advisory Committee on Immunization. NACI has advised that second doses of 2-dose COVID shots can be delayed to stretch supply, but Health Canada says this still isn't recommended. Dr. Howard New says this is because the two bodies are looking at different kinds of evidence, but couldn't clarify which recommendation provincial health officials should take.
As the regulator, Health Canada authorizes each vaccine for use in Canada according to factors based on clinical trial evidence, whereas NACI bases its guidance on the available and evolving evidence in a real-world context.
Meanwhile, on the vaccine approval front, Health Canada says we can expect a decision on the Johnson & Johnson single-dose vaccine within the next few days. In Ottawa, Shaoli Lee, City News.
If Facebook was going to plan an opportunity like this for, commission-free ticket sales, they should have had their ducks in a row.
You might remember this couple, Dwayne and Johanna. Last spring, during the early days of the pandemic, they started holding free concerts off their balcony and became beloved in the neighborhood for their nightly performances following the 7 o'clock cheer. Since then, they've been busy getting their band performing for audiences during a time when travel is not recommended and venues are closed. Like many, they've turned online and recently got excited when Facebook offered 0% commissions for creators selling tickets to live-streamed events. The band jumped on the opportunity and scheduled a live show for New Year's Eve.
But unfortunately, we found out that they weren't really prepared, I don't think, to actually host these paid events.
Dwayne and Johanna now say Facebook still hasn't paid them the money earned from the show, over $3,000.
Originally, all of the creators' terms and conditions guaranteed us payment on the 21st of the month following the event. So since the event aired December 30th, 31st, we expected payment by January 21st.
They say attempts to get in touch with the company have also proven difficult.
Even when they would have tabs on, like, go to this site to check for something, to get payout or whatever, that site wasn't working. Like, that page wouldn't be up and running.
All the help lines for these issues seemed to be down.
Or out of date.
And those help links take us to no one, really. There was one phone number, but it didn't work.
It did say, hi, you've reached Facebook, and then leave a message at the sound of the beep. But it didn't give you an opportunity to actually leave a message.
The pair also explaining there were glitches early on, and that made it hard to sell tickets.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Logging in, my own mom couldn't, I prompted her, I was walking her through every step, was on the computer with her. She's like, I'm buying the ticket, but it keeps saying tickets are not available at this time.
There was also another problem on our show where it got hacked.
And they say they spent a considerable amount of money on promoting the show through Facebook, as well as making tech upgrades like a phone, computer, tripods, and lights. CityNews reached out to Facebook. The company says it is now looking into the issue. For now, Dwayne and Johanna say they're planning to host more live shows through the band's website. In Vancouver, David Zura, City News.
Pressure is mounting on the Vancouver Park Board to reconsider a motion that's going before commissioners on Monday night. That motion is to bring back a temporary bike lane through Stanley Park. Today, a number of businesses gathered to voice their opposition. Sue Kafka speaks for the Capilano Group, which runs the Prospect Point Bar, Grill and Trading Post.
Summer's the time of year that allows us to make the money that will keep us going through the winter. Faced with another summer like last year, the Parks Board decision to restrict car traffic to one lane again is devastating, and it sends a clear message that they don't care and they're not listening. We need to survive. Last year's situation was a nightmare, and after that fiasco, it's hard to imagine that it can happen again, and it is. Here we are.
If approved, the bike line would be reinstated immediately, and it would be in place until October 31st.
Vancouver police have cleared this intersection in front of the Port of Vancouver, which was blocked by opponents of the Trans Mountain pipeline expansion. Protesters began gathering at Clark Drive and East Hastings Street around 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday and continued their blockade into Wednesday night.
We are on stolen land with no treaty in this territory, and we are doing a civil disobedience.
A post on the Instagram page for the Braided Warriors says the protest was in response to the sentencing of a fellow pipeline protester, Stacey Gallagher. He has jail time now. Gallagher has since been released, but protesters still want his charges dropped, so they continued the blockade. Vancouver police starting to move in Wednesday afternoon.
This is a deceitful way to treat so-called British Columbians and Canadians by purchasing a leaky pipeline without asking for our permission on stolen lands. We have no treaties. This kind of gathering is not in the public interest or in the public safety. And shame on the VPD, shame on Kennedy, shame on Horgan.
The protest continued into the night and more people were detained by police.
There was this lady here, really polite, doing anything. She's sitting there because somebody brought a chair for her, but she's actually handcuffed.
This one woman eventually got released. Around 9:15 p.m. Wednesday, Vancouver police say 4 people were ultimately arrested for mischief and intimidation for blocking a roadway. They were taken to jail and released after they agreed to attend court on a later date. In Vancouver, Keir Drunos, City News.
The next time you get on a SkyTrain or bus, there's an increasing chance you'll find some copper surfaces. For the past few months, Translink has been testing copper-based products and coatings on high-touch surfaces. It now says 99.9% of bacteria that touched those surfaces was killed within 1 hour.
These results are really encouraging and they really shape how we are going to go into phase 2 of this project. We'll have more to say about phase 2 in the coming months, but passengers can look forward to seeing more copper on more transit vehicles across our system for a much longer period of time.
What we were able to show is when you have a surface that contains copper, it seems to be completely inhospitable for the bacteria. So it kills bacteria.
The study is now being expanded with even more copper products on more train cars and buses.
Passengers whose flights were cancelled by the airlines are entitled, as a matter of law, to a refund.
If you had a flight with Air Canada that was cancelled or postponed because of the pandemic, you may finally be getting a refund. Unifor, which represents workers at Air Canada, says the airline has finally agreed to give customers their money back.
If you hold up a bank or a corner store, the police will pick you up, will charge you, and you will be tried. If an airline steals passengers' money, they will be considered an upstanding business.
The news of refunds for Air Canada passengers comes from an unnamed source the CBC first reported. It comes a year after airlines were upended by the COVID-19 pandemic. Thousands of flights grounded and many routes canceled, and passengers left without answers or compensation.
The idea that an airline can steal its passengers' money because they claim they need it is not acceptable in a democratic, capitalistic society.
But it seems some action is finally being taken. Reports suggesting Ottawa has reimbursement of travelers on the table as a key demand in exchange for financial relief for airlines, on top of asking carriers to maintain regional routes. But Air Canada and the Finance Department not responding immediately to questions about the refund commitment.
Air Canada is in bargaining, just like the other airlines, with the federal government, so I believe they're reluctant to say anything during the bargaining process.
In Ottawa, Nigel Newlove, City News.
We are getting reports of a major power outage in Vancouver tonight. According to BC Hydro, over 17,000 customers in the Lower Mainland are currently without power. Various neighborhoods are currently in the dark, stretching from Blenheim to Cambie Street and from 12th Avenue to Southwest Marine Drive. For the latest on the story, go to citynews1130.com and we'll have the latest on City News at 11. Vancouver's news is always available on the radio with News 1130 or online anytime at citynews1130.com. Your next edition of City News is tonight at 11. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.